November 9th, 1979 dawned cold and clear. The 3 AM edition of the Scotsman newspaper led on the furore over the IRA stunt. Jim Callaghan, the Prime Minister, had condemned the BBC for allegedly filming an IRA propaganda exercise in Northern Ireland. On an insider page, Albert Morris's column was entitled Reflections of an Alien Kind. In the article, he discussed the attitude of extraterrestrials to an encounter with Earthlings and wrote, "It is not space monsters we have to fear, but mankind itself." It was almost as if he'd foreseen the astonishing event that was about to take place that very morning. The object that was to cause such controversy made its appearance at 8:05 in the morning. A driver, Graham Kennedy, heading west in the A89, was passing the hospital when he noticed a bright light above and to the left of his car. It accelerated towards him a few feet above the ground on a collision course, swerving to avoid a crash with the orange-coloured torch-shaped object. He nearly rammed a car heading in the opposite direction, but fortunately both cars managed to stop before the impact. But the driver of the second vehicle claimed that he'd seen nothing of a mysterious light. Both men might have been forgiven for believing that an unidentified flying object was a figment of the imagination of someone who, as the day was just beginning, was not quite fully awake. But curiously, a remarkably similar event occurred near Warminster in England in 1965, an area in which, after dozens of UFO sightings, became known as the UFO capital of the Western world. On the 10th of August 1965, Terry Pell was driving his lorry to Warminster when a ball of flaming crimson light sped across the sky, then floated down towards his cab in a head-on motion, threatening to smash through the windscreen. Mr. Pell, like Mr. Kennedy, a decade later, swerved to avoid the impact and ended up sliding off the road. There were no other witnesses, and his wife and daughter, although in the car, managed to sleep through the entire incident. Luckily, however, there were other witnesses of the sighting that morning in 1979. A van driver, also heading west on the A8 towards the town of Broxburn, saw a bright light in the sky. Though stationary, it struck him as being too big to be a star or a planet, and the light flashed intermittently on and off, and then gradually grew dimmer. Eventually, as nothing else of significance occurred, the driver moved on, but the memory of this strange event remained firmly fixed in his mind. Around the same time, a young nurse, Anne McGregor, stepped from her bus and started walking along the A89 towards the Bangor hospital. As she went, Anne heard a distant but distinct hissing noise. Glancing upwards, she caught sight of a bright yellow light that appeared to be descending above the area known as Deans, near a hill called Dechmont Law, on the fringe of the new town of Livingston. A few minutes later, a cyclist travelling to work at a tyre factory in nearby Newbridge village stopped at a junction before making a right turn. As he did, he spotted a bright yellowish light that appeared to be hovering over the M8 motorway close to Deer Hill, the local name for Dechmont Law. Did the object land on Deer Hill? And if it did, there are no known witnesses to the touchdown. And for the following 3 hours, no more mysterious lights were reported, but there was an incident that occurred, the implications of which were to reverberate around the world wherever UFOs were discussed. Robert Taylor was a well-respected and honest and dedicated forestry worker. A few years off retirement at the age of 61, Bob was employed by the Livingston Development Corporation, working in the woodlands near the vicinity of Newtown. At around 11 AM on the 9th of November, Bob, in the company of his dog Lara, were making their way through the forest and the trees on the lower slopes of Dechmont Law. As he approached a clearing in the wood, he was shocked to see, only about 12 yards in front of him, a large circular object. According to some accounts, it was supported by 3 metal legs, although Bob himself had not verified this. The object was dark metallic grey, and around the circumference Bob noticed a distinct narrow flange. It did not move, and in places it seemed transparent, which contrasted sharply with the other surfaces, which looked like giant sections of emery paper. As Bob cautiously approached the mysterious objects, 2 small spherical devices, similar to World War II naval mines with spikes protruding all around, suddenly dropped to the ground from the ship. It appeared to Bob that it came from inside the craft, and he caught a whiff of a strong pungent smell which brought on a choking sensation. Over the noise of his dog furiously barking, Bob heard a clear hissing sound. A similar hissing sound to what Anne heard earlier in the day. The next thing he remembered he was coming to, his face pressed hard against the wet ground. His legs were aching, but through the pain he managed to note that there were two spheres and the mother object had disappeared. The barking in his ears confirmed that the faithful Lara the dog had not abandoned him, but Bob for the moment was unable to calm the dog's fear as he lost the ability to speak. In a state of shock, Bob struggled to his feet, but he was unable to get to his lorry started, so he staggered a mile-long journey back to home in Livingston. It was later suggested that it was during this confused period that Bob ripped his trousers, maybe scrambling over a barbed wire fence. The straight, neat lines made by the tears, however, seemed to contradict this. Bob's wife, Mary, was deeply shocked when she saw the state that her husband was in, and didn't know what to think when he told her they'd been attacked by a spaceship, assuring him that there's no such thing. Acting quickly, she phoned the doctor and then Bob's boss, Malcolm Drummond, head of the forestry department, to report the incident. A quick check round Dechmont Law by the other forestry workers failed to reveal anything out of the ordinary. No sign of an alien craft, nor a band of marauding thugs, which would be an easy explanation to make. The local police had been alerted, and from their Livingston base soon arrived on the scene of the crime. Bob joined the officers, headed by Detective Inspector Ian Walk, having insisted on revisiting the spot where it had been attacked. The police and the victim noted extensive ladder-shaped impressions in the ground where Bob thought the craft had been standing. Indentations revealed the path along which Bob explained the spherical objects approached him. Marks in the earth lent support to Bob's belief that it had been dragged towards a larger object before being released. The police took Bob's account very seriously, and a criminal investigation was soon underway, although there was no clue to the source of Bob's attack that was ever unearthed. The file in the encounter remains open to this day. The police did confirm in their inquiries that Bob's trousers bore two significant tears, which had been made in an upwards direction. His legs were cut and bruised in the same area. Someone or something had clearly caught hold of Bob in a grip powerful enough to leave telltale marks. Interest in the incident, now one of the most famous in the annals of ufology, has remained high. Bob Taylor has consistently stood by his account, and the character of the man has convinced many that the encounter was of great significance and it actually did occur at Dechmont Law. Understandably, given the closeness of the encounter, those who deny the existence of UFOs have attempted to put forward a variety of explanations. Scottish skeptic Stuart Campbell had suggested various possibilities, including ball lightning, a mirage of Venus, or Bob having suffered an epileptic fit. Mr. Campbell's solutions have, however, been met with little support. In 1992, Scottish ufologist Ken Higgins and Ron Halliday of the Scottish Earth Mysteries Research Group, with the cooperation of the Livingston Development Corporation, were instrumental in having a plaque erected to mark the site of the historic event, the first time that a UFO site has been officially recognised. Sadly, the original plaque was stolen, but the plans are being made by SEMR to have more solid and fitting monuments put in its place. Significantly, witness accounts of the incident which took place around this time continue to emerge. In October 1992, Mr. A. Ferguson in Edinburgh reported that while parking his lorry in a lay bay around 8 p.m. on the 8th of November 1979, he noticed a strip of brilliant light shaped like a ruler heading for Dechmont Law. Another witness, Mrs. E. Scott, claimed that she also stood at a bus stop looking towards the Pentland Hills. She saw a round silvery object with flashing lights. At first she thought it was a helicopter, but the way she was moving made her think otherwise. Mrs. Scott, understandably, is uncertain of the exact date of the incident. She is sure, however, that it happened either on the day of Bob's encounter or the previous evening. Whatever the day is, it is clear that Dechmont was a hotbed of strange events around this time, and the Dechmont Law sightings has come to be seen as a key incident in the development of Scottish ufology. It put Scotland on the UFO world map, while at the same time inspiring various individuals to enter the neglected area of the UFO investigation.